It's Coach Bergman here live from Cambridge, Massachusetts. And today we're going to be going over one of my favorite topics in the lacrosse game, and that's the clearing game. So I think I got my passion for clearing as a goalie because if you make a great save and you can't get the ball down to the other end of the field, well, it doesn't really matter. Clearing's everything, and being the quarterback of the clear from a goaltending position really gave me a unique perspective of the clear itself, and has really allowed me to have a passion for the clearing. So as always, it's an honor to be able to wear the Harvard shirt to present. It's an honor to work for Coach Byrne, and thank you to Coach Byrne for having the leadership to continue to push us as a staff to develop. And it's been totally awesome. He's the man, and I think I wouldn't be in such a great place mentally during this tough time without him continuing to push me to be better. So thank you, Coach Byrne, for your leadership. All right, so we're going to get going here with clearing. So when you look at professional lacrosse leagues, Major League Lacrosse, Premier Lacrosse, you'll notice that they do a lot of quick clearing. Very rarely are they in the settled clear. So what do I mean by quick clearing? Goalie makes a clean save, ball up and out to a midfielder who's breaking, and we're down playing offense pretty quickly. So this happens a lot in professional lacrosse. One, because the athletes are so impressive. So when you get the ball to a midfielder or some of the long sticks, they just have the pure athleticism to just punt return. But what you'll notice is that it doesn't always happen immediately. And sometimes it takes a little bit to develop. So here you see Kyle Bernlohr, an incredible goalie, makes the stop. He doesn't have outlets right away. But what's important is that people are getting in his line of vision. So right here, you're in a line of vision. Even though it's box side, when you teach people to break to the ball opposite box, you can still hunt for the ball box side. It takes a little bit to develop. What's most important is that you just get in that goalie's line of vision so you can get him the ball and get out with it. But the reason that quick clearing works at the professional level so well is because they have the athletes and the stick skills to make plays like this. This is a long stick carrying with his right hand. He switches over to his left hand. He throws across his body, not to the cover guy, but to another long stick who catches the ball, splits one-handed on his stick, and sprints out of the defensive box and clearing the ball that way. That's very difficult. It requires incredible skill, incredible athleticism. And people in the professional leagues, PLL, MLL, they have the ability to do that. But what I'm really focused on and what I care a lot about is the settled clear. So what happens when that doesn't work? What happens when people break out immediately and you can't get the ball out? And that's what's called the settled clear. So in a settled clear, you always have your goalie. You have your two banana defensemen. And then you're left with four players. Now, the reason I didn't list their position here is because every coach has a different philosophy behind this. If you have long sticks who are great stick handlers, maybe one of them's your third close defenseman. Maybe one of them is your long stick midfielder. Maybe you prefer to clear the ball with four short sticks. Every coach has their own preference. But once you have your two banana defensemen and your goalie, numerically speaking, you have four more players left to help you clear the ball. And because every coach has their own preference, I didn't label their position with a letter. Instead, I used numbers to signify that you have four players left to help you clear the ball. Now, where those four players go is also up to a coach's discretion. You could have the four players horizontally in a straight line like we have here. You could have them staggered in pairs, one high, one low. The guys in the middle, maybe lower. The guys wide, higher. You could have the exact opposite of that. You could have the wide guys come lower and your two players in the middle higher. But what's most important when clearing the ball is your width. So regardless of where these outside players are, whether they're high or low, what's most important is that they're wide. Why is this? Because that requires these riding midfielders to stay honest with their width, which can create lots of space in various areas. When you think about this clearing principle, the most important person that you're going to focus on is this midfielder right here. This midfielder, right? This riding midfielder who's very often a long stick midi, for that matter. This is the most important player to watch because every time we're clearing the ball, we're looking to take advantage of a 3-on-2, not a 2-on-1. Yes, we have an extra player, but when we're clearing the ball, we're looking to take advantage of 3-on-2s. So right here, we see our defenseman and our 2 players. That's our 3 against the riding team's 2. We can get that on the other side as well. 3-on-2. But what decides this is, like I mentioned, it's this midfielder. Because if he goes over to this side, then we have a 3-on-3, which leaves our 3-on-2 on the other side of the field. Again, you could stagger the players open or wide, but what you're always looking for is to manipulate that middle midfielder, who's very often an LSM, to get him to commit to one side of the field. Because if we say the ball is over here and we notice that this midi, this long stick often has pushed over, then immediately we know that our 3-on-2 that we can utilize to clear is on the opposite side of the field. And of course, we now have to be quick because we have to beat this LSM working very hard to get across the field to make this an even 3-on-3 situation. When you're looking to clear the ball, regardless of where you put your 4 players on the midfield, you're going to look to take advantage of a 3-on-2, not a 2-on-1. So let's go to some film from the PLL where we can look at some settled clears and identify the 3-on-2. Top center shot, great save from Kyle Bernlohr. And right away, what do we see? Looking to get in the line of sight of the goalie to get the ball to get up and out. But he's unable to do so because the riding attackman does such a great job. And now we can see some great communication here from our close defenseman using a gesture. Though we don't love keeping one hand on our stick, he uses a simple gesture right here to tell his other defenseman that it is your job to be the second banana. So as we play this out, you can see your 3 players. You have your goalie, you have your defenseman, and then you can see his stick right there at the top of the screen. You have your defenseman. And what I really love here is that the goalie is a little bit behind his defenseman because it gives him an angle to have a clear view of all the passes. So right here, what do we immediately notice? We notice that we have 2 attackmen. So our 3rd attackman being right here means that the other side of the field must be wide open. Because if you remember back to the slides that I showed, you only have 3 attackmen. And if you have 2 of them committed all the way outside of the wing line, and you have your 3rd attackman in the middle of the field, then you can very simply clear the ball to the other side of the field because that is where your numerical advantage must be. However, they elect to stay with this side of the field, and we see danger. But even though we see danger, we can still see our 3-on-2 develop. 1, 2, 3, against 1 and 2. And as we can tell, this riding attackman is already working hard to get to the middle. And if we have better width from our number 2 player right here, we can clear the ball much easier. Choosing to clear the ball with the side where there's 2 attackmen is always a bad idea. You're going to want to clear the ball to the far side of the field in this situation. And because they elect to try to clear with the 2 attackmen, a turnover occurs. Second clear here, and it's a settled clear. So right away, what do we notice? Goalie, defenseman, defenseman, with our goalie a little bit below each of those players. This is great spacing from the whipstakes defense and the whipstakes clear. What does this mean? That we're going to have 4 players up near the midfield line in some varied progression somewhere along the field at the coach's discretion. Hopefully our 2 players on the outside are wide, and hopefully we're taking advantage of that middle riding midfielder in order to determine which side of the field will have a 3-on-2. And this clip does a great job showing exactly that. So as the ball swings here, boom. Kyle Bernler, the goalie, his line of sight is directly at that long stick midfielder in the middle of the field. He's holding him there to keep him honest, hoping that he can help to clearly establish the 3-on-2. Not only does he hold him there to keep him honest, but this cut from the midfielder, knowing that we already have an attackman down, is going to have the LSM, that middle riding midfielder, have to come down to try to honor the field. So as we quickly move the ball in transition, the next 1 or 2 seconds is going to be critical. Why? Because we're guaranteed to have our 3-on-2 advantage on this side of the field over here. But the long stick midfielder, who's John Sexton in this situation, is going to be working super hard to get there. So these next couple seconds are really important because we should see great urgency from this defenseman. And we do. He pushes the ball immediately, and we can see our 3-on-2 develop. 1, 2, 3, against 1, 2 riding attackmen. So this picture shows it all for us. Here's our 3-on-2, our defenseman, our midfielder who's very wide, and our other midfielder who's in the middle of the field. We can see our LSM, John Sexton, who was forced to come down to honor that cut, and thanks to the great eye discipline of our goalie, Kyle Bernler, he's forced to occupy the middle of the field. And when this midfielder right here made his cut down the sideline, that's what forces the riding midfielder to step down as well. So when you have the riding midfielder step down, you have the attackman down, and you have the LSM still in the middle of the field, well, that means that this entire area of the field is going to be open. You have your 3-on-2, 1, 2, 3, against your 2 players, and having great spacing allows us to take advantage of the wide open space. That's a great settled clear from the Whipsnakes. Moving into our third settled clear. This is off of a face-off late in the third quarter. Shot, great save from Kyle Bernler again. And what do we immediately notice? Trying to get in the goalie's line of vision. Joe Nardella trying to get in the goalie's line of vision. This midfielder right here trying to get into the goalie's line of vision because they can get the ball quickly and get up and out. But that's not always going to work because Kavanaugh does a great job riding, and so does Ryder Garnsey, getting in the goalie's face here, which makes him roll out the back, which can initiate the settled clear. So right here, we get our settled clear shape as always. We have our defenseman, we have our goalie, and we have our defenseman, which means what? That we're going to have 4 midfielders up near the midfield line looking to take advantage of a 3-on-2. But what's most important from these midfielders? That we have great spacing with the midfielders who are wide. We need width. We need depth and width from our midfielders, which can give us the space. And we are going to see the cost of having poor spacing in this clip. So this is a settled clear. And this is poor spacing. We have 1 midfielder who's nice and wide. We have 2 midfielder, our second midfielder, pardon me, who's in the middle. But look at our 3rd midfielder and our 4th midfielder here. Poor spacing. We should have one of them who's extremely wide. And what's the cost of this poor spacing at the midfield line? Well, it makes the long stick midfielder, John Sexton, get to cheat over to the ball side. So we see our 2-on-2. What does this mean? Knowing we have always a numerical advantage in the clear, that if we were to swing the ball to the far side of the field, this side of the field, and we had great width from this midfielder, we would be able to clear the ball very easily. But right now, there's no spacing and there's no communication, and these two players both go over the midfield line. Because they go over the midfield line, he's required to stay on sides. So we went from possibly having an easy 2-on-1 with these players on the near side of the field to now we have a 1-on-2. And this is because we had poor spacing, we had no width with these two midfielders, and this box side midfielder, was forced to stay on side, and we now have a 2-against-1 in what we like to call a kill zone. So with 20 seconds, we go from having a clear numerical advantage on the opposite box side of the field, but because of poor spacing, we turn the ball over in the clear, let this run for a couple more seconds, you get Sergio Perkovic stepping down, and he gets a 2-point shot with 3.8 seconds left in the third quarter. This is a huge momentum shift. This championship game is a phenomenal game of lacrosse. I highly suggest it to everyone to watch as just a fan of the game. It's a great one. But because we had poor spacing on the opposite ball side, it leads to giving up a goal with just 3 seconds left. 2 more settled clears here that do a great job showing the clear. So we stop right away, and what do we see? D, goalie, D. This means we should have 4 midfielders trying to find which side of the field we can take advantage of the 3-on-2. And here, again, we see poor spacing. We see 1 down here, which is great, 2 with the ball, but look at this spacing right here. This is not great because we should have one of these midfielders wide. Again, having width from our midfielders is essential in the clearing game because it'll force a riding midfielder to stay wide, and it'll put more pressure on this middle riding midfielder, often a long stick midfielder, which can allow us to clear easily. However, when we have poor spacing, like we have over here right now, no one's wide, we have poor spacing, 1, 2, 1, 2. We have a 2-on-2. Look at all this open space over here. We could take advantage of this midfielder and this midfielder with just 1 guy to cover both of them and all of this field. Because we have poor width with our midfielders, we run into trouble. And now, with the over and back rules in the PLL, we now have a really, really tight 2-on-2. And with John Sexton on the ball, you're never safe. So this is a really dangerous time. And they escape because of how great of athletes they are. But these are just various situations that you don't want to see in the clearing game. You don't want to see people a foot apart from each other with an incredible takeaway defenseman right in front of your face. Last settled clear here from another Whip Snakes game, which does a great job showing them taking advantage of a 3-on-2. One, two. Oh, let me rewind that for a second. You have the player who just threw the ball as 1, second midfielder, third midfielder, and you had an attackman here, an attackman here. They can't cover you all. I'd like to see this guy get a little bit wider, which can make this space that much better, but it's decent width, which allows us to get the ball and get out with no trouble. One clip, one drill. So yeah, that was more than one clip, sure, but here's a good drill that I can use and that we use at Harvard a lot to accompany it. And we'll call it 32 clearing because we're looking to expose exactly what we just talked about, the 3-on-2, while having 4 midfielders have great width. So how does the drill start? Well, I'll draw it up for you here. We actually have 2 goalies. We got a line of defensemen wide on each side. And then we have 4 lines of midfielders, all very wide on the sideline. That's the clearing team. On the riding team, you'll see we have 1 attackman. And behind him, we have 1 midfielder. And we have that set up on each side. So we have an attackman here, which you can see right here, and we have a midfielder. So what we're looking to take advantage of is this, our 3-on-2. So there are various ways to do that, as we talked about. You could have him cut down, and you could have him curl. You could have him cut down and stretch. You could have him cut through, and you could have your defenseman carry. Again, those are all coaches' preferences. But what we like to see here is that we like to see our defenseman attack the tangent. So you'll see right here, our defenseman does a good job attacking the middle of the field. Which creates this 3-on-2 right here. So how the drill works, as you'll see from the next rep here, is that the ball will start in the defensive lines on each side. They'll throw the ball to the goalies, which is where the ball is at right now. And the goalies will throw a transfer pass across to the other side of the field. That's what initiates the drill, because it practices manipulating that riding midfielder, who's very often LSM, because if the ball starts here, he might be this way, and as we swing the ball, he has to work really hard to get all the way over to this side of the field, and that's when the 3-on-2 will start. Defenseman and our 2 midfielders, that's 3, working against these 2 riding players, an attackman and a midfielder. And then we'll just let this play out. You find 3-on-2s in different ways. 1 curls, 1 pushes. 1 sits, 1 dives. You can use any type of coaching lingo you want, but you're going to have to push the 3-on-2 moving down the field. And it has to happen quickly because you have to beat that riding LSM who's getting all the way across the field. So we'll let this play out, and we'll throw an attackman all the way down at the other end of the field just to practice a little pass down, pick down at the very end once we do successfully clear it. So we call this drill 32 clearing because it does a great job showing the urgency that's required as the ball swings to take advantage of that LSM moving from one side of the field to the other. And while that's happening, we get to take advantage of a 3-on-2 on this side of the field. So that's our clearing for today. Again, we're trying to take advantage of finding 3-on-2s all over the field. Once we can find the side of the field where that's on, we're going to be focusing on often that long stick midfielder, that middle midfielder. We're going to be focusing on that player to push him to one side of the field because that is what's going to open up our 3-on-2. Once we find that 3-on-2, then it's just time to go to work. There's so many different ways of exposing a 3-on-2. You can situate these 4 midfielders in a variety of situations. But again, in conclusion, what's most important, having width from your wide clearing midfielders and forcing this player, this LSM, to occupy one side of the field, whichever side that may be, because that is what will open up your 3-on-2. Thank you guys for joining me on this abridged and clearing webinar. I hope that you guys learned something, and I appreciate you sticking with us as we work through our various technical difficulties. If you have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat privately, and I'll try to answer them quickly. I'm also going to put my email down here in the chat. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. So that email is tbergman@fas.harvard.edu. So if you check the chat right now, you'll see my email is in there for you. Again, stay wide with your midfielders. Take advantage of that riding LSM. Make him commit to one side of the field, swing the ball quickly, and take advantage of your 3-on-2 that way. There's so many ways to do it, but I hope you learned to stay wide and to manipulate that LSM. Thanks for tuning in, and if you have any questions, let me know. Stick with us here for a couple minutes, and Coach Kyle, the Sidewall Jedi legend, he'll be with us to teach us about different